If you've got 35 grand to aim at a premium hatchback nowadays, the cars available to you are either good, very good, or excellent. And most of them, let's face it, are German, which means the all-new overtly French DS4 has a tall mountain to climb if it's going to persuade punters away from their beloved Audis, BMWs, Mercedes and Volkswagens. But the bosses at DS Automobiles are confident they can take a slice of this lucrative pie with the sharp-looking new DS4. And this is why. In the flesh, the DS4 looks crisp, clean and really quite different. All versions coming with 19-inch wheels or bigger, matrix LED lights all round, flush-fitting door handles and an intriguing range of styling touches to distinguish it as something just a little bit unusual on the road. The cabin is also bristling with new technology, its designers claiming it's a bit like driving an iPhone. Now that might appeal to you a great deal, or it might turn you right off. Either way, the DS4 is competitively priced beside its rivals, and it comes in 3 distinctly different guises. A basic DS4 hatch, a sportier performance line model, and a more robust looking cross. There are also 4 different trim levels to choose from, and both petrol and petrol hybrid powertrains. Here we drive the 225 petrol and the top spec E-Tense hybrid. Petrol first, what's it like? The good folks at Auto Express usually employ me to talk about cars that are a little bit fruitier than this, a little bit faster, sometimes quite a lot faster and quite a lot more expensive. But there's something about the DS badge, brand, that I've always had a bit of a soft spot for. Lots of style, lots of character, maybe a little bit of stubbornness, some French je ne sais quoi, whatever that actually might mean. In days gone by, the Citroën DS stood for something just a little bit more interesting than the norm. Marketing people quite often speak an awful lot of hyperbole when they try and connect the past with the present, to bring brands that were successful in yesteryear into the present and try and sell vehicles off the back of it. And I don't buy it most of the time, but with this thing, the more time I spend with it, the more I am beginning to buy into it. I think the DS4 feels really quite special, really quite different from your regular run-of-the-mill 30-odd grand premium hatchback. Not just to drive, but particularly to sit in. The interior of this car, in places it's absolutely lovely, and mostly it's really good. It's also absolutely bursting with tech. The folks at DS claim that you get quite a bit more bang for your buck in terms of technology inside this car, and well, just sitting here and looking at what you've got and kind of having a bit of time to play with it, they're not fibbing, you know. This thing has got a lot of sophistication inside, not just in terms of technology, but in terms of build quality as well. And this new big touchscreen in the middle, well, I mean, that's nothing new. Every car on sale seems to have one nowadays. And one of the best things about it for me is that there's still a button right there that you can press to go home, to start all over again, because there are so many menus and then so many sub-menus within those menus. But when you get yourself in trouble, you can kind of go, right, okay, home button, thanks, I'm out of that, and now I can start playing again. It just works a treat. I really like the driving position in the DS4 as well. I personally like to sit low, and you can, because there's huge amounts of adjustment on the seat. But if you want that kind of quasi-SUV driving position, you can do it, because the seat goes right up, there's still tons of headroom, and there's still lots and lots of room in the back and in the boot. This thing is seriously practical. It is not exactly a cutting-edge car to drive, but at the same time there is nothing wrong with the way this thing drives. You've got a 225 horsepower petrol turbo engine in this one. They also do a plug-in hybrid. In 2024 there'll be a full EV version, and I think that's the one that will suit the nature and character of the DS4 the best, the full EV powertrain, because it has this sort of majesty and effortlessness to the way it flows down the road that would suit a torquey EV powertrain down to the ground, I reckon. In the here and now though, this thing is just fine. It's perfectly quick enough. The steering actually is really quite good. I really like the way this car steers, but you know, I'm not going to sit here and wax lyrical and tell you that this thing goes around corners, you know, like a BMW or a Mercedes. Having said that, it goes around corners pretty well, and the ride is very good, so long as you don't go anywhere near this button and select Sport, in which case the adaptive dampers go into a mode that I just don't see anyone staying in for very long on the public road, because it ruins the ride quality. Yes, the body control gets better, steering gets a bit sharper, throttle response gets crisper, etc, etc, but the ride just takes a very long journey south and becomes rubbish. So really you just want to notch it back into comfort or normal, and it's very good. It's perfectly good, actually. The DS4's cabin does work well, and it feels quite sexy inside too. The sense of design quality is strong, as it should be in a car that wears the DS badge, and the tech levels are impressive, without any of it being particularly baffling, which is great. It's practical too, mostly, although rear legroom isn't as generous as in some rivals, even though headroom is decent in all directions, and the boot is more than a decent size. On the move though, it's the hybrid version that impresses the most, as it should do perhaps, given that it costs a whopping 43 grand in top flight La Premiere specification. Right, this is where it gets a lot more interesting in the world of the DS4. This is the plug-in hybrid version, and as you can hear, or actually not hear, the refinement is in a different league when you put it in electric. It just suits the slightly majestic nature of the DS4. It's lovely. You just kind of flow down the road, which is what the DS4 feels most natural doing, even with the petrol engine up there. But with a petrol hybrid engine and then in an E mode, everything just suddenly makes sense. This is how you want your DS4 to go down the road. This is what you want it to be powered by. I am not the world's biggest fan of EVs, but I can tell you, this car will make way more sense and be even nicer than it is now with a full EV powertrain. In every other way, it's just as good as the one that I was driving just now. It's not exactly slow when you put your foot down either. So let's put in sport mode and then bury the throttle so the petrol motor chimes in. Acceleration is not bad. It's not as strong as the 225 petrol, nothing like. But the 225 petrol isn't the car you get into and go, right, let's find the nearest B road to go crackers across. It's just not that kind of car. It goes all right. It really does go all right. And then you pop it back into full electric. Oh, and this calmness just kind of washes over you and into the cabin. I'm getting a bit carried away here. Good motor vehicle, this. In some ways, a brilliant motor vehicle. Maybe the future ain't so bad after all.